We will now move on to the last session of the dialogue, Prospects of Taiwan-India Partnership. Please allow me to first introduce the moderator and speakers for this session. The moderator is Chairman Hsin-Huang Michael Xiao of Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation. Our first speaker is Ms. Palki Sharma, Managing Editor of New Project Network 18. She will be joining us virtually from her room. You can see her on the screen. All right, our second speaker will be Dr. Cheng-Yi, Research Fellow of the Institute of European and American Studies of Academia Sinica. And the third speaker will be Mr. Ajay Prakash Sawhney, former Secretary of Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, India. And our fourth speaker will be Dr. Sana Hashmi, Postdoctoral Fellow of Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation. I will now pass the floor to Chairman Xiao.
This one. Thank you. Well, thanks to technology, now we got Ms. Sharma with us. That's great, because I was wondering how I'm going to introduce her. And only thing, wish her the best and wish her well. And great. Okay, we are come to the session 3, the final session. I always do the final session, so that we can have a high peak of the conclusion remark by the speakers. The prospect of Taiwan-India partnership, and from session 1 and session 2, and we actually talk about multifaceted partnership and also the issue confronting us. We're talking about political, strategic, military, economic, technology, social, and even culture, when Alan Young talked about it. And so there are many relationships we can deal with. And I don't want to make the wrong impression that the Taiwan-India relation just began today. It has been there for long years, but now we wanted to deepen it and make in the right direction and take a very healthy and stable, steady steps. So let's talk about realistically how can we envision the prospect of Taiwan-India partnership. So without the, I was asked by my staff, we hope to end this session by 6:20 or 6:15 if we can. So that, and then we can have a conclusion session, and then we can have a dinner in time. We can have a relaxing dinner after the two days busy schedule and eating schedule too. So we can eat again, but with that very relaxing mindset. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce first speaker, Managing Editor, Network 18, Ms. Palki Sharma. Ms. Sharma, are you okay?
Very well, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so now the floor is yours. The air is yours. You have 7 minutes or so. Please.
Right. Good evening to everyone. Namaskar. And thank you for having me here. I would have liked to join in person, but thanks to some Wuhan virus-related restrictions, I'm confined to my room. But I've listened to all of you, and I have learned, and it has added to my perspective and understanding. And I was diligently taking notes when Ambassador Bambavle said, since there are no journalists in the room, let me say this. So, but your secrets are safe with me. I want to thank ORF and the Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation for hosting us and for hosting this dialogue. I've been asked to speak on the prospects of the Taiwan-India partnership. Now, some of you may have heard of Kautilya. He was a famous Indian strategist. And Kautilya said that the enemy of your enemy is your friend. Now, Taiwan and India have a common challenge in China. And yet, the bilateral relationship has floundered for much of their history. And as we look at the prospects, it would do well to dwell on history a bit. In December 1949, India was among the first Asian countries to recognize China, and much has been said and written about then Prime Minister Nehru's unfounded optimism and unsolicited support to Mao's regime, but I'm not going to go there. We do know the result of that, though. For the next 45 years, this relationship was in a deep freeze. There was no official contact. And Taiwan, the Taiwan of that era, had a maximalist approach, insisted on the one China policy, had the same position as Beijing on the McMahon Line and Tibet and so on and so forth. Some attempts were made in the 60s, did not go very far because there was no side had this as their policy priority. And it changed in the 90s, I'm sure all of you know this, when India adopted the Look East policy and Taiwan adopted a pragmatic foreign policy. And so we saw some convergence. And this was a modest beginning. In 1995, de facto embassies were established. In the year 2000, the DPP came to power in Taiwan and the relationship assumed a political color. And this was also a phase which we describe as one of the best phases of the India-China relationship. Prime Minister Vajpayee had concluded a good visit. We were talking about Chindia, and India's orientation was different, you could say. So when it came to dealing with Taiwan, India faced obvious political constraints. That changed in 2008. Cross-strait relations improved, and that gave a new opening to India-Taiwan relations. And Taiwanese ministers started traveling in India. Interestingly, meetings started happening in official buildings. And there was tangible progress. Joint feasibility study for FTA was announced by Nirupma Rao, if I'm not wrong. And in 2018, this got a big boost when Mr. Narendra Modi took over as Prime Minister of India. He that oath-taking ceremony had a Taiwanese representative, and this was the first time a Taiwanese representative was invited to the oath-taking ceremony of an Indian Prime Minister. That's because Prime Minister Modi had a political perspective on Taiwan, and he also had a history of engagement. In 1999, as the BJP's General Secretary, he had visited Taiwan. In 2011, as Chief Minister of Gujarat, Mr. Modi had hosted the biggest business delegation from Taiwan in India, and he wanted to build on that engagement. In the last few years, the people of India have also started seeing Taiwan as an ally and a friend. There's more awareness. And I think public sympathy for China was always low in India, but post Doklam and then the pandemic and then Galwan, that negativity has, at least in some quarters, become open hostility. But how much of this sentiment, public sentiment for Taiwan has translated into policy is a question that we need to try and answer. I think India and Taiwan have been in the exploratory phase of their relationship for way too long, for more than 2 decades. I think it's time to consolidate now. And for that, it's time to clearly define realistic goals and objectives like we've been doing in our discussions today. Because while geopolitics is said to be about shared values, I think it makes real progress only when you spell out shared interests. So India and Taiwan must outline those shared interests and perhaps try and answer some fundamental questions. I've listed 5 for your consideration. One is, can India and Taiwan have a strategic partnership, and what would that entail? Second, can this be done within the ambit of the One China policy? Third, can it be insulated from cross-strait relations? Fourth, what does each side bring to the table? And fifth, is it worth aggravating the hostilities with China? Because that is going to happen. And I think answering these questions will help us define the shape and scope of the India-Taiwan relationship. I think as of today, we're making incremental progress. We've discussed the bilateral trade relations. Bilateral trade has grown to a record high, more than $7.7 billion, I understand, but that's still just 1% of Taiwan's total trade. 120 Taiwanese companies are operating in India. All of that is great, a major semiconductor deal that a lot of you have weighed in on. India is bullish on supply chain diversification. Taiwan has the technology. Taiwan has the means to cater to the Indian market. It's a chip superpower. Basically, both sides stand to gain by this relationship. I don't want to go back to what has been discussed already. But then there's also the political and security dimension of the relationship. Unlike Taiwan's other allies, India shares a long and restive border with China. And what started in Galwan 2 years back has still not been resolved. And yet India spoke for Taiwan over the recent tensions. A senior Indian diplomat squarely accused China of militarizing the Taiwan Straits. And in an official statement calling for de-escalation in this region, India did not spell out its support for the One China policy. India has not done so in the past 12 years. And a growing number of Indian commentators and policymakers rightly back this approach. And they say, and rightly say, that India does not have to be overtly cautious about China's sensitivities when China continues to violate India's sovereignty. Like I said, we have everything going for this relationship. Antara, I think, spoke about complementarities as of the others. I believe India and Taiwan are ready for a comprehensive strategic partnership within the ambit of the long unstated One China policy. And like I just outlined, history tells us that it's important to insulate this relationship from either side's ties with China, as also from domestic political forces as much as possible. I know in democracies, that's not always easy. So this relationship now should be approached not only vis-a-vis China, but as a tie-up between two peoples who share values of democracy and freedom, two regimes who are committed to preserving a free and open Indo-Pacific. And there is growing political convergence. It's time to make the most of it. If I may, I'd like to propose the 3C formula: conversation, collaboration, consistency. I think if we stay with these, there's a lot that can be explored, a lot of untapped potential. It is time, I say, to upgrade the India-Taiwan relationship. I believe I've completed in my stipulated 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Palki. You sound quite good. And also you look well. So hope you recover very speedily. Can she leave by tomorrow? Oh, okay, good. Otherwise, you can stay here. Okay, thank you. I think the very good retrospective and also a good and promising prospect of Taiwan's India relations. So we will leave all those notes for the further elaboration later. The second, I would like to invite Dr. Lin Cheng-Yi to provide his remarks. So, Dr. Lin.
Thank you, Chairman. I will start with a few complaints. Number one, New Delhi has so far shied away from openly making Taiwan bid for observer status, embodied like the All Health Assembly. That is also the campaign of the largest circulation of Indian newspaper, Taiwan-India. And number two, complaint the parliamentary delegation. We do have the Honorable Kumar participating in this workshop, but parliamentary delegation visit and legislature level dialogue between India and Taiwan have not taken place in recent years, particularly since 2017. And number three, India intentionally skipped any mentioning or reference of Taiwan in international arena. Other members of the Quad, United States, Japan, Australia, they underscore the importance of peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. But New Delhi kept silent from the very beginning, or the summit starting from 2021. However, there are some appreciation. Taiwan, I believe, appreciate India not to make any compromise to Beijing and decline mentioning New Delhi's support for one China principle or one China policy as requested by Beijing in bilateral document between New Delhi and Beijing. And Taiwan also appreciate for the first time ever the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Palki statement on calling for the exercise of restraint, avoidance of unilateral action to change status quo, de-escalation of tension, and effort to maintain peace and stability in the region after House Speaker of the United States Pelosi trip to Taiwan. And then I will come to the next step Taiwan and India can move forward. And number one, a comprehensive or cooperative partnership is needed for Taiwan and India. There are multiple areas where India and Taiwan can collaborate. For example, the smart city, farm tech to semiconductor, renewable energy, and even Mandarin learning. For example, Taiwan Education Center could be the good substitute for Chinese Confucius Institute, but it's in Taiwan side need to move forward in that direction. And number two, India, for the first time, referred to what it called the militarization of Taiwan Strait by Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka and mark a more prolonged expression on the New Delhi view over the situation in the Taiwan Strait. And we need to study correlation of crisis or tension in the Taiwan Strait and also along the Sino-Indian border, not only back into the history of the 1962, but also in current situation, environment. And India will face a dilemma when its major Quad partner are involved in the Taiwan Strait crisis, with only New Delhi sitting idly with the PRC flexing its muscle in water surrounding Taiwan, connecting the East and the South China Sea. As a gentleman only mentioned that only diplomatic overture or statement could be offered. And Beijing deemed the Quad run counter to the trend all the time, and the aspiration of the regional country, and it will find no support, and it's doomed to fail. So whatever New Delhi position dealing with the Quad, no matter how New Delhi constrain or restrain itself in mentioning anything related to Taiwan, it will not change the mindset or the leader in Beijing dealing with the issue. And number three, a Taiwan delegation went to India in August 2022. The delegation visited the Dholera smart city in Gujarat and also semiconductor laboratory at Mohali, Punjab, during a 4-day visit. And the Power Chip Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation in Mandarin, Lijidian, even though it's stuck jumping down in Taiwan stock market in the past several months. Lijidian, the world's 6th largest contract chip maker and the 3rd largest in Taiwan, was part of the delegation. Even if it is long overdue, a step like this one is in right direction. In addition to the digital or ICT cooperation, we need to have the intelligent assessment of the PRC, either domestic or external affair of China. And we also need to have the network coordination, division of labor, the ORF and TAEF, and National Maritime Foundation and TAEF. Very good in that direction, but we need to include the IDSA, which is the more reserved in any cooperation with Taiwanese counterpart. And we also need to pay special attention on the Prakash Island. The Prakash Island is located 170 nautical miles from Hong Kong and 140 miles from Guangdong, Santou, and 400 nautical miles from the Philippines, and 240 nautical miles from Kaohsiung. So, which is an island with geopolitical importance, but has been forgotten in maritime strategy in the South China Sea for decades. Prakash is more important than Scalapora Shoal, a disputed island, but simply no one paid attention to that. As Admiral Lemba, I enjoy your lecture in the Resina Dialogue and also in Asia-Pacific Roundtable. And maritime domain awareness is very important. Indian Ocean, the South China Sea, and Prakash extending to the Baji Channel in water between Taiwan and the Philippines, and move beyond the first island chain. So I will stop there. Thank you.
Let me add it that Dr. Lin Cheng-Yi is currently research fellow in the Institute of European and American Studies at Academia Sinica, my colleague. And he was a founding president of the Institute of Defense and Strategic Study, which is a think tank under the sponsorship of the National Defense Ministry. Okay, thank you for your genuine concern and so also some issues that you raised. So we will wait for the later for further discussion. So the number 3 speaker is former Secretary of the Ministry of Electronics and Information and Technology in India, Mr. Ajay Prakash Sawhney. Okay. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm building on, like Ajit Manochaji said. Yesterday, I was feeling a bit lonely in speaking about electronics and IT. Today, I'm able to build on what Hsin-Huang, Ajit Manochaji, Christy, Roger Liu and Trisha have said, so I can build on some of the things that they have already said. The very first thing is that there are many positive factors for the relationship between Taiwan and India. Number one, a very large market, I think representing about $300 billion in 2026-27. An export goal of $120 billion by 26-27, which represents a huge growth over where we are today. A $75 billion demand for semiconductors by that period. The first fab will not bring in more than $2 to $3 billion out of that. So this is just touching the tip of the iceberg, even if the first fab actually happens there. There are huge incentives in place. There's $30 billion of incentive which is available to be tapped. Many of the companies from Taiwan are already tapping that incentive. $7 billion through the PLI scheme, $13 billion in associated PLIs for other sectors, and $10 billion for semiconductors. There is talent, abundant talent, bottomless pool of talent. And that is one of the pain points here. I think there's huge, immense potential of taking this forward. Growth potential of 10x is hardly any other place where you can grow 10x in a few years to come. It's a win-win. It represents a win-win for Taiwan as well as India. What is the progress on ground? The progress is slower than expected. There has been considerable progress, but it is slower than expected. The Foxconn India, there are three apples in the sense that Hon-Hai and Wistron and Pegatron. All three are in place. All three are now functional. All of them are producing what they are set to produce. iPhone 14 is today, already it has been manufactured and it's getting shipped to Western Europe. And there is one entity which was there even before that, again a part of Foxconn India Holdings, which can do anything but Apple. So there are 4 entities actually on the ground. And then there are good announcements on Vedanta and Foxconn bringing in the CMOS fab as well as a display fab. I think it's very important to recognize the importance of being first. Suzuki was the first company from Japan that came in and reposed faith in India. Till today, Maruti Suzuki has the largest share of the huge vehicle market in India. It's extremely important to capture that mind space. As India grows, India will have more choices. This is the time to make sure that Taiwan puts its imprint into the semiconductor space in India. What are the common goals? There's also some positive factors here. One, that whatever investment has come into India has been profitable. Whoever has come in and invested in India, more than 95, 97, 98% of those investments have been exceptionally profitable. All the companies that have come into India have witnessed a huge profits, whether it is the software companies or the companies that have come into hardware or electronics so far. They have grown very rapidly. There is high momentum today. India has grown electronic manufacturing at 23% in rupee terms, 21.5% in dollar terms before the pandemic. And in the next 5 to 6 years, the plan is to grow it at closer to 30% year on year on year. A 30% growth year on year needs to be understood and tapped. There are strong partners. There's strong partnership between the governments. And there are strong partners like Apple and Vedanta that are already in place. A huge company like Tata's, who were never into electronics earlier, are today into electronics. I think these other companies are waiting in the wings. So it can be not just G2G. B2B might be a wonderful route to explore. What are the goals that I suggest? The first goal I suggest is like a arithmetic equation. 10x in 5y. 10x in 5y. Grow Taiwan's footprint in India in terms of manufacturing, investments, etc. 10x, 10 times in 5 years. That represents a CAGR of less than 60%. It's 58 point something. I think it's eminently doable. And I would expect it to actually cross that, not remain below 60%. Bring the local supply chain there. Whatever we do, we must do for success. We cannot do it as a, just to represent that we are doing something. If we have to do it to be successful, then we need the local supply chain and also the many components and sub-assemblies. I think it's important to tap talent aggressively and jointly, and also explore new domains and new product lines. It is not just the existing product lines. In fact, even in the existing product lines, computer hardware can be brought in where there is an education. There's going to be a huge demand for things like tablets and laptops. These things we have forgotten that these, still represent an opportunity. The product lines like iPads, hearables, wearables, all of these represent huge opportunity. Medical equipment represents a massive opportunity in the light of the national digital platform in healthcare that is coming up in India today. And finally, I would like to say that there is a huge opportunity space that can be explored together. That of trusted devices, trusted equipment. There is a huge trust deficit in the equipment that is available today. And once we have both the fab, design, and manufacturing across all the way to the product happening together in India, that is the core brand identity that we can go in after. Trustedness. There is need for urgency and there is need for certainty. Certainty through ramping up the supply chain and bringing in a complete and comprehensive ecosystem. If we lose time today, we lose a lot. And finally, I would like to say that even today, what the companies have done on ground represents about, I think, upwards of 50,000 jobs. When it reaches 200,000 jobs, this represents about 1 million people who are part of the Taiwan family in India. If it touches more than that, and then this is the families that will be directly benefiting from what Taiwan does there. If we count the indirect benefits, those go to another 3 million people. It is like building a constituency. It is like building townships which have Taiwan written all over. I think this needs to be recognized and there is need for urgency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We actually, for the 2 days, I heard so much about semiconductor. I found that maybe this is an international congress of semiconductor industries. But I learned a lot, though. I realized it is important. The supply chain is important. That is something to do with the security, strategic, in the years to come. Okay, so let's turn to the last speaker, but not least, Sana Hashmi. She's the postdoctoral fellow at our Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation. And I want to tell the Indian friend that your Indian lady here made a great contribution to our foundation and also to bridging the relationship between Taiwan and India. And so, okay, so Sana, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Professor Xiao, for your kind words. I'm always honored and you're always praising me. Thank you so much. and I'm delighted that we are having this dialogue today. I joined TAF, and since the very first day, I had this desire to have this dialogue, and we are able to do this today. I'm so grateful to TAF and ORF. I'm the last speaker. It's a difficult task for the last speaker, and I hope I don't repeat what has already been said. I don't share Roger's pessimism with respect to India-Taiwan relationship, but I do agree with you on the prospects and what the current status of the India-Taiwan relationship. I do agree is not rosy at all. Specifically, I'm eating and breathing India-Taiwan relationship for the past 3 years, so I definitely agree with your insights. And also, I really appreciate Dr. Lai for dropping the truth bomb. In India, whenever there's a talk about Foxconn, everyone gets excited. But in Taiwan, I keep hearing that Foxconn is a Taiwanese company, but it has American blood. So I'm not very excited about Foxconn going to India, specifically with respect to India-Taiwan relationship. And I believe we need to change the way how we look at India-Taiwan relationship. In the past 2 years, we have seen a lot of growth in the relationship bonhomie between the people of India-Taiwan relationship, what is actually happening at the government level. I'm not very happy about the G2G interactions with India-Taiwan relationship. But even if we look at the publications that are coming out on India-Taiwan relationship, most of these publications are on the China factor, are through the China lens. And I feel this is something that we really need to change. And I'm not really undermining the significance, the importance of the China factor in India-Taiwan relationship. Of course, this is one of the most important factors, and this is something that is limiting India's approach towards Taiwan. But I believe that as think tankers, as policy thinkers, it's our responsibility to give a fresh perspective and give feasible recommendations when it comes to India-Taiwan relationship. And in this regard, I believe India-Taiwan relationship is still one of the most understudied and underappreciated set of relationship within the larger Indo-Pacific framework. And it's important to understand the nuances of the relationship. And it's also important to understand how Taiwan and India view each other. What are the expectations from each other, and is there a policy change from India's side that we have been talking about, and what could be the road ahead? First, I strongly believe that it's crucial for both India and Taiwan to advance ties, and it should be on its own merit, because it's mutually beneficial. There is no doubt about that, that India and Taiwan engaging each other is based on mutual benefit. And there are definitely tangible benefits. But it's also important to understand how Taiwan views India first. So Taiwan considers India as a very valuable, important partner. Of course, as Professor Xiao mentioned, that India, there have been several developments, and this has been happening for a very, very long time. But what I'm seeing that since the coming of President Hsin-Huang, I'm seeing more efforts from Taiwan's side to reach out to India. And in 2016, the new Southern policy was established, and India was identified as a key priority country for Taiwan. And also when President Hsin-Huang came to power, in her inaugural address, she mentioned about how Taiwan needs to diversify its relationship, and it needs to reduce reliance on a single market, that's China. And when we talk about the new southbound policy, contrary to the popular perception, the policy was not introduced primarily to engage the Southeast Asian countries. There were two versions of Go South policies before. So I think on the basis of the success of Taiwan Go South policy in Southeast Asia, the new southbound policy was introduced, and the scope and mandate was expanded. And now India, New Zealand, Australia are important countries for Taiwan within the scope of the new southbound policy. So Taiwan is reaching out to India systematically, and India was not really traditionally on Taiwan's radar before, but now it's systematically and meaningfully reaching out to India. But when we talk about Taiwan's Indo-Pacific policy, to be honest, for Taiwan, India is not a pillar, most important pillar in the Indo-Pacific, but still an important piece of its Indo-Pacific puzzle. And Taiwan is keen on engaging India. There's no doubt about that. But when we talk about India's policy towards Taiwan and how Taiwan is viewed in India, India still remains cautious. Even though we saw what happened in 2020, there was so much bonhomie between the two sides, but Indian government still remains cautious when it comes to Taiwan. But with changing geopolitical situation, I believe the intensity of cooperation has definitely increased. And the mandate, of course, remains the same: economic, culture, education, technology. But I'm seeing there are noticeable signs that India is a little bit shedding its hesitancy towards Taiwan. And I believe there's no major policy change from India's side. It's also because Ambassador Bambavle is here, and I think you would agree with me, if India really moved towards Taiwan, that policy will be irreversible. So I think India is really buying its time and seeing how it goes ahead with Taiwan. But Taiwan is a very also valuable partner to India, and I'm seeing some kind of reciprocity from India's side. For example, how Ministry of External Affairs tone has changed. In 2018, it was totally different. In the interest of time, I'm not going into details of how the policy and how the tone has been changed. But despite all these developments, I believe that this isn't enough. And this is the time is ripe. And if India and Taiwan do not engage each other, it will be missed opportunity. I'm not even halfway through my presentation, and I just have 3 minutes. I'll be quick. And I've been discussing with Indian delegation, and I think there's consensus that there is underutilized potential, and India really needs to reach out to Taiwan more. So I think I have recommendations for Taiwan, India individually, as well as for both Taiwan and India. What could they do together? For Taiwan, I believe that it really needs to bolster the new southbound policy. It's a people-centric policy. The focus should be on direct connectivity. There used to be China Airlines flight twice a week. There's no direct connectivity. So I think it's very important for us to have direct connectivity. Ambassador Das talked about tourism. Before pandemic, only 40,000 Indians used to come to Taiwan. It's nothing when we talk about Indians going out. So I think we really need to work on it. Taiwan also needs to give easy tourist visa to Indians, as India gives e-visa to Taiwanese. Also, Taiwan has a lot of scholarships and fellowships for foreigners. Why can't we have new southbound policy scholarships and fellowships so that scholars and students from the new southbound policy countries also understand Taiwan better? So this is a complaint that I got from my media friends in India, that TCC in India is not really engaging Indian media meaningfully. And if you look at Indian media, they are very friendly towards Taiwan. What they told me specifically during my visit to India, that we want to share Taiwan's story, but we need more engagement from TCC. So perhaps this is one recommendation that MOFA could take from here. Also, I believe it's very important for Taiwan to encourage businesses to go to India. I know, and I'm very well aware, that there are genuine concerns, and we've already talked about it. Lack of familiarity is there. But to raise the stakes in the relationship, we have to have robust economic ties so that India is also compelled to talk about Taiwan more. Then what India could do, and I've been advocating for it, India should be a part of GCTF. We already have Australia, Japan, and US. So ITA should definitely be a part of GCTF. And Quad, we saw during the Quad FM meeting last time, we saw a statement on the importance of stability and peace in the Taiwan Strait. I think it should be a norm, and Quad should talk about Taiwan and the importance of peace and stability. It's very important to deter China. And I feel that internationalization of the Taiwan issue is really going to deter China. Then I think Ambassador Bambavle, when he was Joint Secretary in 2011, and when the feasibility study the announcement took place, Ambassador Bambavle actually said that if China could benefit from Taiwan, why not us? So I think this is something that we really need to look back. And Minister Thian, when he was in India, he suggested that India should have parallel ties with both Taiwan and India. And I think this could definitely be done. And policy planning division, India has robust policy planning division. Raisina Dialogue is co-organized with the policy planning dialogue. I believe policy planning division and CCCS, the MEA's in-house think tank on China, they should really talk to Taiwan on China. If you want to understand China, you have to come to Taiwan. There's no other way. You can't go to China. You can't talk to Chinese anymore. So I think the best way to understand China and to understand and talk about similar challenges, India has to come to Taiwan. And of course, India has to give easy access to MEA to Taiwanese officials. This is one complaint that I've heard from Taiwanese officials. Now, what India and Taiwan could do together, connectivity, and it can't just be physical connectivity, it should be digital as well as democratic connectivity as well. Then India-Taiwan Parliamentary Friendship Association was revived in 2020, but I'm not really seeing any development and any engagement between the parliamentarians from Indian and Taiwanese side. Honorable MP Sujit Kumar is here, so I am sure that his visit will encourage more visits from India and also Taiwanese delegation visit to India as well. Then I think it's very important for us to have a ruling party dialogue between India and Taiwan, and I've been advocating for that, and I believe that we get to see a dialogue between DPP and BJP Foreign Policy Division soon. Then I think think tank exchanges like these are very important, and today you all would agree that we have had such great discussion, and we are going to take a lot of lessons from today's discussion. Then I believe we also need to talk to students. We also need to get more students to Taiwan and more Taiwanese to India. We need to understand each other better, and we can only do this through people. Now, I think till now, China has set the discourse in relationship between India and Taiwan. And for India specifically, letting China decide the course of India's foreign policy, specifically with respect to Taiwan, has not really proven beneficial and is not going to be beneficial in the future as well. So I believe both India and Taiwan must look beyond the short-term priorities, goals, and realize long-term goals. And to optimize ties, an approach that blends a people-centric process with a non-traditional security-centric policy should be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sana. You make a long list of what we should do in the future. It's good. Okay, now floor is open. You are skipped one, so I'll give you a chance. Okay, two. All right, please, Roger. Over there, the one, two.
Okay, you want to go first? Okay. Yeah, Sana, I feel you about your sharing over here. Well, when CCCS was planning for the China Economy Conference, I was part of that. Well, actually, a lot of outsourcing should explain this kind of thing. Like they outsource it to the Gateway House, and Gateway House approached us, and there seems to be some hindrance regarding Taiwan because they are talking about how Taiwan can play a role here. I mean, in the Chinese economy, but no Taiwanese scholars was invited. So I think there must be something over there. And I think, like you said, the MEA should change their mindset, and all this GCTF thing is something that I failed to mention in my sharing for the last session. Yeah, I think that's very important. And, well, people are too cautious, to speak, well, like that. I think they should change their mind. Thanks.
And you?
I want to ask a question that it's possible for the civilian space cooperation because our National Space Organization had a program that tried to launch dozens of small satellites in the next few years. And that we can make intelligent satellite. However, we don't have the rocket launch capability. So it's possible for this kind of missile launch business, and it's, of course, it's purely the civilian use purpose. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Congratulations, Sana, for an excellent event and a very good speech. My question is regarding expectation settings. Generally, throughout your speech, you've said that India and Taiwan relations they are very natural. They shouldn't be hyphenated through China. So, having said all the things, future is very bright. Everything is good. But should the expectation settings be done? I'm talking about borders. So as we look for long-term relations, should ambiguities be maintained? What is Taiwan's stand on Indian border issues? What is India's stand on Taiwan? Does ambiguity merit long-term, for long-term relations? What is your take on this? Thank you.
Mr. Kumar, I think you raised your hand. I didn't see it. Sorry about that.
I mean, if you do not have the time, it's okay. But, Okay, thank you, Professor Michael. Now, I just wanted to add to what Ambassador Bambabile mentioned in one of his slides, that we need more business delegations, and I think everyone here spoke of boosting economic ties, having more think tanks and civil society engagements, and building on cultural, educational, people-to-people exchange. I'm all for it, but I think, and this Mr. Lamba also stressed on it, unless we have G2G, government to government, and particularly political contact, most of it will end up with much ado about nothing. I do not know why there is so much of diffidence. There's no one from MEA here, but I have been, running from pillar to post for this. What Sana has mentioned, that we need to have more parliamentary delegations, and I cannot tell you how much effort I had to put in to come here. So there is so much of, in a way, I mean, cautious is a very polite word. I think diffidence, let's say diffidence on the part of MEA to have this parliamentary delegation from India visit Taiwan. So this has to, I think we need to have a parliamentary delegation visit Taiwan, not to miff China. I have been saying that the India-Taiwan delegation, the India-Taiwan relationship should stand on its own legs. It need not be China-centric. It need not be a byproduct or dependent on what Taiwan or India has its relationship with China. So I think at some point we need to have to come out of this extremely cautious approach. I mean, government of India, and walk the talk. If we have to be seen as a rising power, then we need to behave like one. So I strongly believe that it's high time that India sends a parliamentary delegation, an official delegation, not a semi-official or a, I do not know how MEA perceives my visit, but it has to be a proper parliamentary official delegation. Thank
you. Please, each speaker can have 30 seconds to reply. Let's reverse the order. Sana, you go first. 30 seconds.
Thank you, Suyash. And it's a very valid question. And on social media specifically, I keep getting this question about ambiguities and Taiwan's ROC's claim on Indian territory. First, that ROC's claim, and there's a lot that's going on within Taiwan, especially changing identity for them as well. Domestic reasons, not easy. For example, what happened during COVID. Taiwan can't even go and change the name of the country because there are domestic compulsions. So I think the issue of ROC's claim on Indian territory is something that's not pressing for them right now. And also, according to my interactions, this is something Taiwan is not going to press claims on Indian territory. So I think we Indians need to be assured of that. Then about India's policy on One China, India doesn't talk about One China policy for its own reasons. We haven't done this since 2010. But even when we used to adhere to One China policy, we never mentioned Taiwan in the same breath. So I think there was always this room for expanding cooperation with Taiwan. So I don't even talk about elevating the level of relationship when it comes to India-Taiwan relationship. When I came here for the first year, I kept saying that in India-Taiwan relationship, even basics are not there. We don't even fully utilize the existing areas of cooperation. We talk about trade. It's not even 1% of the total trade of India and Taiwan. So what are we talking about? I think we shouldn't even talk about security cooperation. What we should talk about is how to elevate economic ties, the mandate of the representative offices in both the countries. So I think this is what is important right now.
Okay, Ajay, Mr. Sawhney.
Questions were really directed towards me.
Cheng-Yi.
It takes less than 7 hours to fly from Taipei to New Delhi. About the same timing between Singapore and Taiwan. So we need to increase our people-to-people, intellectual-to-intellectual cooperation. We need to study the PRC, our common adversary to a certain extent. Since August this year, the new normal of military deployment in water and air surrounding Taiwan. That is some relevant for Indian decision maker. And very important, the PRC always have long preparation, but they lack surprise. When Nancy Pelosi landed in Taipei, 10:45, and in 10 minutes, they announced the military exercise from August 4 to August 7. So they have long military preparation, and we never take it too lightly. So we need to compare our notes regarding our understanding, our interpretation of the PRC.
Thank you. I think one of the prospects of Taiwan-India relationship is one of the media, the coverage, media. So to Mr. Sharma, you this time you cannot see Taiwan nothing, right? So I would like to extend my invitation for you to come back again to see the Taiwan and write stories about Taiwan in a you think you fit way. So please, Sharma, it's your turn to reply.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to come back, and I think Sana spoke about the Indian media and their complaints. And let me add my pet peeve. I've been asking for the president's interview forever. If she speaks, I think the people of India would want to know Taiwan's perspective on India and would be able to understand it better. But about the complaints that have been made, and I understand where they're coming from, I think it's important to understand that you engage with different partners differently. I said, unlike Taiwan's other allies, India shares a long and restive border with China, and that is a reality that nobody can wish away. And India will have to work within that complex situation as it builds on its partnership with Taiwan. They say in management that you should always first aim for the low-hanging fruit or the easy win. And we've been talking about those easy wins: trade, semiconductors, which has a lot of potential, maritime intelligence, information sharing, people-to-people contact. I think it's important to put the thrust on these aspects of the relationship first. What some of our other colleagues are asking for are basically grander political statements, making a point. And political statements, I think, tend to make headlines, but not always tangible progress in relations. So a parliamentary delegation definitely is going to be welcome. But beyond a point, it will not change anything. I think at this stage of the India-Taiwan relationship, and given the tensions that both countries face vis-a-vis China, it's important to work within the ambiguities and establish a solid foundation from where we can launch the next stage of the partnership.
Okay, and with that note, that we conclude this session 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, moderator, and all our speakers. We have completed 3 sessions of our dialogue. As we are approaching the end of this event, please join me in welcoming Dr. Alan Yang to deliver a vote of thanks.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to all of you by wrapping up a few notes. The first thing that I would like to say is numbers matter. Starting from yesterday afternoon, the Prospect Asia Roundtable, we have been navigating the journey of numbers. I'm delighted to share with you my homework. I've been taking notes I've been taking notes very hard, just like a graduate student. And I would like to share with you a takeaway of the secret number of this IT dialogue, India and Taiwan dialogue. That is 37. 37, including the 7 qualities and 3 T dimensions, 3 partnership, and 4 M's in the first session of today's dialogue. And regarding the second session, we have 3 highs. And the third session, we are very excited to navigate the 3C formula and 4 concern or complaints plus 3C reminders, including comprehensive partnership, correlation of crisis and chips making coordination or cooperation, and with a long list of the reminder and suggestion from Sana. So this 7334 plus Secretary Sawhney's 3 apples. So 7334334 plus 3 plus another 1. Total, we have 33. So that seems to constitute a very clear takeaway zip code or takeaway secret number of our discussion today. And since I have only a few minutes, so I will follow this good practice of the thought leader and also distinguished guest to share my vote of thought. I was puzzled by the vote of thought. What is vote of thought? Vote of things. How do I vote, and how to what, to whom, or through which channels? So let's vote. I will vote for Professor Hashpan and Dr. Sana Hashmi. Just kidding. Sorry for the cold jokes. I would like to wrap up by 4 things. 4 things. So no more numbers, only 4 things. The first thing goes to all the dedication of Observer Research Foundation to visit Taiwan and to co-organize this very meaningful dialogue and also to engage with us for the very thought-provoking deliberation today. And the second thing is my special thing goes to Professor Hashpan and also the colleague from the ORF, Ms. Trisha and Antara, for instrumentalize the dialogue and collaboration from the MOU to realize to a realized dialogue and also the follow-up cooperation. So that's my second thing, the special thing. And the third thing is my extreme thing to Ambassador Das and also to the colleague of the India Taipei Association for the proactive promoting of the Taiwan-India relationship and also the facilitating of the India-Taiwan dialogue starting from this year. I always remember that the Deputy Director General visited our office at TAEF and mentioned that we are very excited to promote the think tank link and also dialogue based on the shared value and common interest. And we respond that let's do it starting from this year. We know that it will be a very difficult and tough job, but however, with the help and assistance of ITA, finally we make it possible. And apart from these 3 things, my utmost heartfelt thank goes to the beloved and advanced participant to this dialogue, that is all of you. I would like to thank you for your contribution in leading the discussion, as well as to advance the high point of Taiwan-India relationship to a higher point after today's deliberation and very thought-provoking recommendation. And I think starting from today, definitely the Taiwan-India relation is not only starting from today, but with today's effort and very thought-provoking deliberation, we do believe that we can achieve more and also to march for a more coherent direction to tackle the issues, challenges together. So with that, I would like to conclude my vote of thanks. So with the 4 things, totally 37 numbers. So Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alan Yang. This marks the end of the inaugural Taiwan-India dialogue today. We would like to thank all our distinguished guests here for joining us here, and also Ms. Palki Sharma, who are joining us from her room. You all make this happen, and we hope to see you very soon at next year's dialogue in India. Thank you.